Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have tracks. Okay, so the last thing we want when talking about a huge sinkhole that happens to be in the ocean that holds many different secrets and mysteries at the bottom is to hear that we have found tracks, but we don't know what's causing these tracks. In December of 2018, a team of explorers and scientists decided to finally take a trip down to the bottom to see all there is to find at the bottom of the Great Blue Hole. We'll talk about this expedition a lot today, so remember it. Erica Bergman, who was the chief submarine pilot on the expedition and who is an oceanographer, explained that they had observed tracks at the bottom of the sinkhole, but that they were unable to identify them and that they remain, quote, open to interpretation. This alone isn't the most terrifying thing there, but when we take in some of the other things we know about the hole, like how it's the second largest marine sinkhole in the world, or how there could potentially be an entire cave system lurking somewhere in there, more on that later by the way, things start to get a little more unsettling. It quickly becomes clear that these mystery tracks are only a drop in the bucket of the mysteries of the Great Blue Hole. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Kubera snapper. This species of snapper fish are marine ray-finned fish that can be found around Dean's Blue Hole. They have oval-shaped elongated bodies and they have 2 pairs of nostrils. One of the most unsettling parts of these fish is their teeth. They have large canine teeth that are visible even when their mouths are closed. While they are a fairly sought-after fish for food, they've also been known to cause a certain type of foodborne illness. So eat if you dare. In our number 8 spot today, we have the comb sea star. Also sometimes referred to as the sand sifting star, these guys are a sea star that is the most widespread in their genus. These guys are bottom dwellers, which usually means if you're coming into contact with one, it's likely accidental, so it's super important to be on the lookout for them. These guys have spines on them, which can obviously cause injury to the skin, and their venom is in a gelatinous form around the spiny areas. The venom they possess is a powerful neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, which is the most well-known of all of the marine toxins. This neurotoxin is a sodium channel blocker, which means that it prevents the nervous system from carrying messages, which then translates to your muscles being prevented from contracting in response to nervous stimulation. If a lethal dose of this toxin has been ingested, symptoms will likely be present within 17 minutes, and they include things like gastrointestinal symptoms, sweating, headache, tremor, paralysis, and eventual death. This is all to say, although these guys might look relatively harmless, those spikes are scarier than any of us might have thought. In our number 7 spot today, we have tarpons. These are a fish that can be found around the Blue Hole, and they belong to the genus Megalops. The fish found in this species are found in both freshwater as well as marine habitats, which is exactly what makes the Blue Hole such a perfect home for them. These fish definitely aren't small, growing to be about 4 to 8 feet in length. These creatures, once in their adult stage, are nocturnal hunters who like to swallow their food whole. Despite the fact that they definitely aren't the most tasty food, these fish are quite sought after in terms of fishing because they put up quite a nasty fight, and they also have this insane ability to leap out of the water. In our number 6 spot today, we have turtles. Okay, definitely the least unsettling on this list. There are a ton of sea turtles that can be found around the Blue Hole, and part of this might be due to the fact that there's actually an area called Turtle Cove quite close to the marine sinkhole. Some of the turtles seen here are some of the largest species that exist, but despite this, the species of turtles seen in the Bahamas have populations that are rapidly declining. This is due to a variety of things such as coastal development, climate change, etc. You get the idea. Thankfully, the Bahamian government has stepped in and made it illegal to catch turtles in the country's waters, but still more needs to be done if we are going to save those turtles. In our number 5 spot today, we have seahorses. Some of the most unusual appearing fish in the sea. There are plenty of seahorses that find their home in the Bahamas. These creatures range quite a bit in size, from just under an inch to sometimes being over a foot long. Seahorses aren't a very fast-moving species, and they don't tend to move very far during their lifespans. Part of where they get their name from is their long snouts, which they end up using to suck up food as they don't have any teeth. They aren't the best hunters because of that whole slow-moving thing, but they make do by snacking on small crustaceans like shrimp or krill. Food passes quite quickly through seahorses though, which means that they have to continually eat in order to make sure that they don't end up starving. In our number 4 spot today, we have stonefish. These guys are one of the most venomous known fish, and although they are primarily marine, some species are known to live in rivers, but those obviously aren't the ones we're talking about today. Most of these guys can be found in coral reefs, and the name of these these fish comes from their camouflage color, which allows them to blend in with their surroundings, but unfortunately, because they are so good at disguising themselves, swimmers may not notice or see them and then inadvertently step on them, which can cause a whole slew of issues. When a stonefish is disturbed, it will inject an amount of venom proportional to the amount of pressure it's feeling, and this venom comes from the glands at the base of their needle-like dorsal fin. The sting of a stonefish is said to be extremely painful, and if left untreated, it can actually be fatal. The poison within the venom that the stonefish possesses is a proteinaceous toxin called verrucotoxin. The symptoms of this poison include respiratory weakness, damage to the cardiovascular system, convulsions, and paralysis. Although there are many studies that have been done on this toxin, much about how it works and the exact mechanisms of it are not yet fully understood, which just places this already terrifying creature in a cloud of mystery. In our number 3 spot today, we have stingrays. I probably don't need to tell you much about why this creature is something that is just a touch unsettling. Stingrays are most common in coastal, tropical, and subtropical marine waters throughout the world, and they are a group of sea rays, which are a kind of fish that are actually related to sharks. There are a wide variety of stingrays that can have anywhere from 1 to 3 blades. When contact with the spinal blade or blades is made, it causes immediate trauma to the area with a cut, swelling, and muscle cramps from the venom. The venom from a stingray contains the toxins cystatins and galactin. Galactin causes cell death in the victims, while the other one inhibits defense enzymes. This combination can lead to increased blood flow in the superficial capillaries and even cell death. In our number 2 spot today, we have the black tip reef shark. These sharks have been seen in abundance around Dean's Blue Hole, and they are easily identifiable by the prominent black tips that can be seen on their fins. They tend to reach lengths of around 5 feet 2 inches, and they tend to stay in the same local area for several years at a time, which is part of the reason that when they are seen at the Blue Hole, there tends to be quite a few of them. They aren't a very easy species of shark to approach, as they will likely swim away from you. They don't pose a huge risk to humans, but sometimes those who are wading in the waters might be at risk of having their legs bitten by a slightly confused one. In our number 1 spot today, we have the dive. In April of 2010, professional diver William Truebridge broke a free diving world record when he dove into the Blue Hole. He ended up reaching a depth of 302 feet or 92 meters without the use of fins. This wasn't enough for him though. He decided to outdo himself in December of the same year when he dove to a depth of 331 feet with a single breath while only using his hands and feet to propel him through the turquoise waters. These are all wonderful accomplishments, but in the same vein, it led to quite a terrible moment. In 2013, in November, a free diver named Nicholas Mavoli was attempting to set his own kind of record in a similar manner. Unfortunately, this dive proved to be fatal after he suffered a pulmonary edema.
At number 10, we have an octopus nursery. 8-legged alien-looking things with suction cups all over their arms and beaks for mouths. Octopus are creepy-looking things, and to top it all off, they can camouflage like a Navy SEAL, and they are super smart. If these are the kind of things that make your skin crawl, then just running into one of these guys would probably freak you out. Well, on the underwater expedition at the Davidson Seamount, there was a rather shocking discovery. They had a remote probe that was on the ocean floor around 10,000 feet, and they came across which seemed to be an octopus that was next to not just one, not just two, but a group of 1,000 octopuses in a nursery. They were all there laying their eggs and using the heat from the volcanic vent to keep them warm. I would hate to be the guy who accidentally steps into that crack and then gets devoured by thousands of sticky arms. But if you're at 10,000 feet underwater, you probably are already screwed.
In our number 9 spot today, we have stalactites. The Great Blue Hole is a really popular diving destination, despite the fact that divers obviously can't go all the way to the bottom for a multitude of reasons. When diving here, you definitely need quite a bit of experience beforehand, and for those lucky ones who have done the work, they might be able to get just deep enough to see the incredible stalactites this sinkhole holds. While these are gorgeous to look at, they are part of the reason that we know some of the most ancient history behind this place at all. Stalactites are only formed when water is dripping down stone. This gave scientists the insight they needed to realize that this wasn't always a place that was submerged in water. In fact, they concluded that this was actually a big, dry cave in one of the most prolific eras in the history of our beautiful planet. This means that at some point there was probably a ton of stuff living in it. They believe that the cave likely formed during the last ice age, so sometime prior to 14,000 years ago, but at the end of the ice age it ended up flooding, collapsing, and thus we have the Great Blue Sinkhole. In our number 8 spot today we have movements. This is one that really ties into the last one with the discovery of the stalactites. Of course, when they first found them, they took some samples so that they would be able to confirm their above sea formation, and when doing this analysis it was realized that not only did they form above sea level, but that some of them were off vertical by about 5 degrees, and that these changes were consistent. This gave another very valuable insight into the history of this location and led scientists to the conclusion that there must have been some past geological shift or tilting of the plateau underneath at some point. This event would have been followed by a long period of relative stillness. This change in the stalactites showed us that the land must have been moving as well, not just the sea level rising. It's not the most unsettling thing on this list, but it certainly is cool. It's really amazing how such a small change can show us so much. In our number 7 spot today we have trash. It has become abundantly clear that there really isn't any place on Earth that is free from human influence, and that most definitely includes our litter. If trash can make it to the deepest depths on Earth in the Challenger Deep, of course trash can somehow find its way down to the bottom of the Big Blue Hole. During that 2018 expedition we spoke about earlier, the team stumbled across more than they were expecting when they found a littered 2-liter Coke bottle, I'm glad it wasn't Pepsi, and they also found a lost GoPro. They were even able to see that this GoPro still contained some vacation photos. Safe to say that it's not the most remarkable discovery they made down there, but it should be something that might be a little concerning to us all. In our number 6 spot today we have sand. Like I mentioned before, this sinkhole obviously has an incredibly rich history, and we are just starting to learn about the things that it holds, but it takes time, equipment, and money to really be able to have these sorts of large expeditions like the one in 2018. There might be fossils or other things just waiting to be uncovered that we don't even know about yet, but the clock is ticking. As it turns out, as quickly as the blue hole appeared, it might also be disappearing. Apparently there are waterfalls of sand that are continually falling into the hole, and it's slowly but surely being filled up. It's like a real, very large, kind of scary hourglass, essentially. At least it's not something that's gonna happen overnight, so for now we still have time to admire its beauty and take a look at all of the mysteries it might be holding. Maybe it just serves as a reminder that nothing is permanent, except for the internet. In our number 5 spot today we have more caves. So remember Erica Bergman we talked about before in the first one? She was the one who led the expedition in 2018, the submarine pilot. Well, she didn't only talk about mysterious tracks, she also explained that there is an enormous cavern close to the bottom of the hole. Like a huge unexplored cavern in the middle of a huge mysterious marine sinkhole? I'm just saying, that's more mystery than I can handle. This means that there could potentially be a large underwater cave system, and the Great Blue Hole is just the beginning of it. She said, quote, "The roof has collapsed on this particular cave, but the whole reef could be dotted with similar caverns which simply haven't collapsed into blue holes. Yet. Who knows what these cave systems could be hiding? Undiscovered species? Answers to some of the ocean's mysteries? The possibilities really are endless." In our number 4 spot today we have marine life. So of course this stunning location is a popular tourist attraction. People really want to dive here, and I absolutely cannot blame them. But one thing you may encounter, should you choose this as your next adventure spot, are sharks. There are a few different species of sharks that enjoy calling the waters around the blue hole home. They include bull sharks, Caribbean reef sharks, and hammerhead sharks. Surprisingly, these sharks aren't even at the top of the concerns list when it comes to diving here, as shark attacks truly are quite rare. Sharks are pretty gentle creatures and we're not their favorite thing to snack on, but they are big, they are powerful, and they can do a lot of damage when the going gets tough or when they feel frightened or threatened, and that is just one of the many reasons that this is an area that hopes for more experienced divers rather than a place someone would recommend for their first solo dive. In our number 3 spot today we have nitrogen. Another thing you will likely encounter should you choose to go diving here is something that is actually quite common for those those who like to venture and dive in the deep sea. We are talking about nitrogen narcosis. Basically, divers of course use oxygen tanks to help them breathe underwater. These tanks normally don't just contain oxygen, they contain a mix of oxygen, nitrogen, and some other gases as well. This is all fine and well, but the deep sea is not like our lives up here. After about 100 feet, the increase in pressure can alter these gases, and to be honest, the further you go, the more the pressure increases. When these altered gases are inhaled, they can have unusual sort of intoxicating effects on the body. This is something that people who choose to dive here will experience, and it can be disorienting to say the very least. These effects are reversible and should wear off when you get to shallower water, but when you begin to feel the effects, it won't be at the time you're ascending. Your dive instructor will likely be only leading you deeper into the waters. This is all just a long way of saying it's a step you need to be aware of and prepared for. In our number 2 spot today we have toxicity. So the simplest way to put this is that at the bottom of the Great Blue Hole, it is poisonous. After you get about 2/3 of the way down to the bottom, the water is just full of hydrogen sulfide. This means that there is little to no oxygen left down there, which is exactly why any marine creatures that get stuck down there are sure to meet a gruesome fate, but it is also why the water is actually toxic and corrosive. If you get deep enough without the proper protection, this hole will kill you and any other living thing that goes in it. It is truly unforgiving. Some of the experts in that 2018 expedition said that there were thousands of remains of marine life, like conches, which is a result of these creatures just getting a little too close to the edge. One explorer even said that you could see little prints where the conches presumably were trying to climb back up before being asphyxiated by the toxic water. Yeah, so basically while it looks beautiful on the surface, the Great Blue Hole is just a macabre marine life cemetery. In our number 1 spot today we have remains. By far the most unsettling of all of the discoveries on this list are the bodies of 2 divers that were found during this 2018 expedition. There have been 3 divers who are known to have gone missing after going diving in the Great Blue Hole, and to be honest, we aren't sure which 2 were found or exactly how they died. The reason for this is because, despite the fact that they were found, authorities decided that the best thing to do would be to leave them. Of course, rescue is a complicated process, but they agreed and decided that, quote, they're at peace where they are. It serves as a reminder of how dangerous it can be, even for those with all of the experience necessary. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have the depths. Dean's Blue Hole is one of the deepest marine sinkholes in the world and is actually a contender for the deepest. When first really being explored and measured, it came as quite a surprise just how deep it really is. While most other known blue holes have maximum depths of somewhere around 360 feet, Dean's came in and wiped that previous record away when it was recorded that depths there reached 663 feet, almost twice the previously known record. This of course means that while the hole is quite a popular diving spot, going down to the deepest depths isn't something that many people are going to get to experience in their lifetime.
At number 9 we have the Siberian lake monster. Of course, if we're doing a list of scary things that live underwater, we have to throw a giant mysterious sea monster on here. What separates the Siberian lake monster from other more popular guys that we have seen like Loch Ness and that kind of stuff is that underwater scans have actually picked this guy up. This thing is deep in Lake Labingcure, and some radar has shown that it looks like a 33-foot long creature is living there. Now this is probably just a skeleton, but if this thing is dead, it means that there was once a giant man-eating monster in this lake. I thought we were supposed to be safe in freshwater. They've nicknamed this thing the Devil, so you know he's a good time and loves company. So next time you go up to the cottage and you're swimming in the water and you feel safe, remember there might be a giant monster lurking underneath the water ready to turn you into a side dish. At number 8 we have the Blue Hole. Now there are several blue holes in the world. There's one in Belize, there's one in the Red Sea, there's a giant one in my heart that was left there from when Reboot ended on a cliffhanger. How are you going to end a show that so many people fell in love with on a cliffhanger? I will never trust again. Well, this one is between Cape Verde and the Caribbean islands. Scientists are really confused about this thing. It's a crack in the bottom of the ocean floor and is several thousand miles long. What's strange about this is there's no explanation of how this happened. It might have been tectonic plates moving around, but when this happened, the Earth will probably start to repair itself and there's been no sign of this. My theory is this is where Godzilla goes to sleep at night. I mean, it seems like the most logical answer. It's either that or the gateway to hell. Like, come on guys, I'm doing real science work here. At number 7, we have the Yonaguni complex. This was discovered by scuba divers in the 1980s. I think that's the scariest part about this one. Could you imagine going scuba diving back in the 80s? The technology back then must have been a tube going up to some guy who would blast fresh air down to you using a bicycle pump. I don't even think they had decompression sickness figured out back then. The chances of you coming up the bends was probably super high. Well, if it wasn't for a few divers in Japan who were willing to sacrifice it all to look at some cool stuff, we wouldn't know anything about the Yonaguni complex. It's still a mystery as to what this thing is. It looks like some temples that might have existed thousands of years ago, but when the ice age decided to melt, it would have covered this entire area. This could be why an entire civilization got plunged underwater. Or the temple could have been on a cliff, and then when a massive earthquake hit, it knocked the temple into the water. But like everything in life, there are some haters who say this whole thing is just a natural rock formation. Some people just want to ruin everything. At number 6, we have Anacorra Cista Twista. One of the reasons why the underwater world is such a mystery is because we find things like this in there. Sure, there are beautiful things down there like bright fish and chubby marine mammals, but there's also the unknown, unidentified organisms like Anacorra Cista Twista, which should be the name of an 80s hair metal band. But what is this thing? Well, it's a protist. And what is a protist, you may ask? Well, it's an organism that doesn't belong to any animal group, fungus, or plant group. What does that mean? I really have no idea, you guys. I think it means it could be an alien. Some alien came down to Earth for a swim and then scraped its knee on some coral, and now we have alien creatures running around the ocean, probably waiting for you to pee so it can swim up your pee hole and then work its way into your brain. It's really the only logical answer. At number 5, we have the Bimini Road. How were the pyramids made? Was it aliens coming down to share their technology and secrets with us, or was it just thousands upon thousands of slaves who sacrificed their lives and their spines to build them? Well, we don't know and we may never know, but the Bimini Road is another one of these mysteries. It's off the coast of the Bahamas, and it looks like it could have been a pathway that was placed perfectly with giant slabs of rock. Similar to the way the pyramids were made, it seems that these large slabs of rock were too large to be moved by man, and also like the pyramids, these giant slabs were also perfectly placed so well. So where does everyone's mind go when something like this happens? Well, magic or aliens. The logical answer is that this is a natural phenomenon of the water moving and hitting the rocks to make these formations, but people think that this was made using advanced technology from aliens and could have been the road to Atlantis. Honestly, I like the Atlantis theory much better. It's more fun. At number 4, we have Colossal Squid. Yeah, this thing is a big no thanks for me. So everyone always talks about how there might be sea monsters out there, but this thing actually exists. There's never been one caught alive, but several have washed onto shores dead, and they are massive. The largest one ever discovered was 45 feet long, and it was dead. So you know there was an even bigger one out there that killed this guy. They don't even have suckers on their tentacles, they have hooks. Let me say that again. This squid has 10 giant arms covered in hooks. This thing is straight out of a horror movie. Scientists aren't even sure what something this big eats. They think it probably feeds on whales or your deepest, darkest fears. I wouldn't be surprised if the colossal squid works part-time as a gatekeeper for hell. It makes me think that the old Greek stories about the Kraken might have been real. At number 3, we have underwater circles. Giant formations of circles that are formed underwater and nobody knows how they got there. These mysteries were discovered off the coast of North Carolina, Florida, and Belize. Now, what are they? Like many things on this list, myself and the entire scientific community have no idea. But here are some theories. Maybe they were formed naturally by either two things, water currents or some sort of animal mating ritual. Another idea is that these things were made by ancient civilizations before the Ice Age. All these things would have been above ground and might have been art left over by some old-timey tribes. And the third theory is that they look kind of like a bullseye, so it might be some sort of nuclear missile target, and if you hit it hard enough, the explosion will cause some sort of major natural disaster like an earthquake or tsunami, or if we're lucky, both. At number 2, we have megalodon. If you have a fear of sharks, you're gonna love this one. Megalodon was a prehistoric shark that was even bigger than the giant hooked tentacle beast that was earlier on this list. If you've you've already forgotten about the colossal squid, it clocked in at around 45 feet long, where megalodon was closer to 60 feet long. It was a 60-foot shark that could probably rip a blue whale in half in one bite. Well, maybe not that, but it was still a gargantuan creature with teeth the size of Brock Lesnar's fists. This thing wouldn't even chew you, it would just swallow you whole and then fart your skeleton out into the dark cold ocean. At number 1 on our list, we have giant eyeball. A mysterious giant eyeball washed onto the shore of a Florida beach back in October of 2012. I don't know any other kind of giant eyeball other than a mysterious one. There's no super common regular giant eyeball just lying around. But this is also Florida. This is the state where people smoke crack at weddings and kiss alligators on the lips, so maybe it's a little more common over there. Well, this giant eyeball was found by Gino Cavacci, and he didn't know what the hell to make of it, so he took it home and then stuck it in his freezer. Then he called the cops, and the cops came in and told him, "We don't do giant eyeballs on the beach. You have to call the wildlife people." And then he called the wildlife people, and they were like, "What the hell is that?" And he was like, "I don't know, I brought it to you guys to try and figure out what it is." And then some people were like, "Maybe it's a sea monster," and other people were like, "No, it's probably from a marlin." And I think in the end, no one really knew what the hell it was. But just so you know, there's giant eyeballs out there just laying around the beach sometime.